Hello, hello everyone. We have a special guest, and you'll never guess who it is. You'll never guess. No, his head is crumped out, but he's solemnly posing for you. Oh, wait, chat's not gonna work. Hold on. Is it gonna work now? If it's not working, it won't work. It's all right, because I can see chat here. Hello, everyone. Tiltic is there. Hello. Glad to see you. Says, love that you actually clickbaited the video. Yeah. Yeah, I had to. It was fun. Hello, Lise Tessier. Hello, hello. Toffee. Yes, the cat's there. He's out of chat, out of focus or out of frame, but he's nonetheless very much there. Lenore, hello. Oh, FT says, hey, glad to catch you from the beginning. I'm happy that you're there from the beginning. Welcome, welcome. Garish Grackle, hello. Glad to see you in here. We'll give some time for people to join in. Usually I don't start from the beginning right away. I leave some time for people to join, but the cat was there. He's a bit shy, so he's hiding his face. Lee Hayes, hello. Howdy. Howdy, howdy. Hey, Rio. Rio, come here. Show your beautiful face. He's not, he's shy. Debo says hi. Hello, Debo. Oh, chat started working a bit. That's good. That's really good. I hope people enjoyed the clickbait art history. It was it was a fun video to make, I guess. You could see I actually intended on making it on the ambassadors by Holbein, but then I got kind of bored of the subject and I had to get it out of my system. So I was like, I don't have to make a video on this painting if I find it boring. But I do want to make a video on that painting. So let me do it the way I want to do it. Hello, Kitty Ooh. Hello. Oh, thank you, Lise. Thank you very much. It was a short one. I usually make longer videos, but in this case, it was short and sweet. Rich Mitch, hello, Rich Mitch. Hello, everyone. People are starting to come in. Hello, hello. Make yourself comfortable. Oh, Ethan's there. No, Ethan's there. Then now Rio wants to leave. I'm sorry, Ethan. Don't take it personal. Rio's gone. Hello, Ethan. I'm doing very good. Hope you're also doing pretty good. I'm not like the sun says, hey, yo. Hello, I'm not like the sun. First time I see you in chat. Glad to see you. Let's Zigam says, interesting topic. I may say good forest man. Is it because of this? Is it because of the cabin aesthetic in the back? Yeah, I'm excited to talk about landlordism. Oh, Rashab made it for this stream. Hello, Rashab. Freya Moore, the clickbait worked. Did it work on you? I know some people in the comments were like, "Oh, another YouTuber who fell prey to the clickbait." And I thought everybody would know that's ironic because I made it as even Ballet was like, that's kind of tacky, you know, the red with the white outline. Like that's the point. It's making it kind of a caricature, right? Toffee says, awesome vid. You mentioned another painting was clickbait with a painting of sisters. What was the clickbait there? Just curious. Like, maybe it wasn't there long enough. Gabrielle Destré and one of her sisters is Gabrielle Destré pinching the nipple of her sister in a bathtub. And like the reason why I think it's clickbait is because, or why I would characterize it as art history clickbait, is because the interest there is just that it's odd, right? It's just that it's so weird, and it's like I have art history books here. I should have taken them out if I. It's just I don't have like their names exactly, but so many of them focus on this. Oh my god, it's so weird, to get the curiosity of people, and then you realize that it's not that interesting. But that clickbait is, this is weird, and you want to know more because it's so weird, but it doesn't actually have that much substance. Lee Hay says the clickbait video made me think about the attention economy. Oh yeah, and it's like, but it's still like I said, it's in like, it's also in like art history books. It's been like it's been a thing for a very long time, maybe exacerbated by our online space. The think of none. First time I see you in chat. Hello. He says, they say hello everyone. Hello, hello. Let's zig him. Says yep. Yeah, at least this is right, and like that's one thing that I have to concede. Lee says, but to the risk of boring you, clickbait art is a great way to introduce people in art analysis. I think so too. I think it can be a good way, but you run the risk of people only being into art because of the clickbait in a way, or not wanting to make it more because they find it, oh, actually it's actually a very boring painting. And it's like, oh, well, you might extrapolate that to more art in that sense. A very similar conversation I had with people here in GuestBZ. I want to open an art gallery. I'll make a video about that eventually. Pretty excited for it. But a lot here, there's no art available to the public. So the public is not trained in art literacy or trained in like appreciating art. And I've met a lot of artists and art-oriented people around here, and they're like, all right, we can't have art that's too challenging in a way, because people here are not used to having art, and like if we're challenging them too much, they're just not going to get it, and they're not going to like it. And I feel like diluting this art to make it more accessible might run the risk of just not giving it the power that it can have in a way. So I want to have challenging art, because I think art is powerful in its challenging nature. If you take out the challenging part out of it, or you diminish it to make it more accessible, then people will come to that art and will, okay, well, is that it? And if that's it, well, they might not be interested later. And like same thing for art history clickbait in a way. People will go to that painting. Oh my God, that is really interesting. Why is she pinching that other person's breast, or or her sister's breast, or why is that skull in a very weird shape? And then you explain, and they're like, oh, okay, is there anything more? And it's like, nope, there's nothing more, it's just very cool. And I feel like that might, yeah, I've made my point. I made now I'm gonna read more chat. Sorry about that. Hello everyone. Oh, I'm so glad. Look at that. Hello. I'm happy you enjoyed that video, Toffee. I'm very happy about the alt-right. I'm sure we'll discuss it again in other videos. I'd like to do interviews one day. Maybe we'll talk about that. Nice hood. It's not a hood, actually. It's just a sweater. Finns Crow says, big fan. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting. Hello. JT sends a heart. I send a heart back, JT. FT says, I find clickbaiting a powerful tool of propaganda. So if this propaganda is for a good cause, i.e. an entry point for appreciation of art, I wouldn't necessarily see the problem. Yeah, I don't think clickbait in itself is a problem. It just has some risks. Yay says, hello, Yay. A lot of people that I've never seen in chat before. I'm very glad to to see y'all catching up. Vicky's having strong opinions on landlords. Yeah, we'll talk about landlordism. Oh, thank you, Vigish, on PragerU. Yeah, it was a fun video to make. One day, if you have any videos that you want me to respond to or whatever, don't be afraid to send them in. I really enjoyed that experience, and I just don't know which video to go over. I'm not that connected to PragerU. I'm not subscribed to PragerU, whatever, or other videos that are maybe worth addressing. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to P says, hello, kitten. You're talking to Rio? Rio's not there anymore. Kenji, hello from Europe. Hello. Hello, Kenji. Oh, was it the cat behind me? JT. All right, I'll start the video as always. The stream. Well, of course we can plug the Discord. Yesterday I had a really fun discussion, like almost 4 to 5 hour discussion with people in the Discord on voice chat. It was really, really fun. It was really, really thought provoking, and I'd like to thank people who are in the Discord for that. And if you want to join, the Discord link is in the description. Also, we put when there's new videos or whatever, we put them in the Discord on the Discord server, and yeah, we can hang out there. There's discussions. I think there's a Minecraft server now. People are playing Minecraft. I used to play Minecraft. I don't play Minecraft anymore. Debo says, I love your content. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Abracadabrus says, hi from San Francisco. Are you familiar with the works of Charles Bragg? I am not. His paintings and drawings are some of my family's favorites. Nice art like that. Oh, we have Blind Dweller in chat. That's that's a surprise. Everybody says say hi to Blind Dweller. All right. Let me show you Blind Dweller. I will, hold on. Blind Dweller, among others, are the reason why I don't make a video on Bishinsky. Because they already made that video, and I don't know what to add to what they're saying. And they make amazing content, so I don't know what to add to their commentary. Blind Dweller says, I love your important videos to art history, mate. Amazing content, and I agree. It's this nice sweater. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's amazing. I didn't even know Blind Dweller knew about me. That's really nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. I imagine everybody already knows about Blind Dweller anyway. But they're they do when it comes to art history, they do a lot of creepy art, the kind of creepy art that I wasn't sure if I liked or not, or if I like I did a whole video on that, right? But yeah, if you're interested in knowing like what I think about creepy art, I did a video on that like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I do think there's a sociological interest to it, and there's definitely a fascination for it. And Blind Dweller like is not only creepy art, it's creepy stuff. Yeah, it's actually art all the time, actually. Yeah, from what I see. That's insane. That's what I'm looking. I don't know if it was always art. A 4-part series on Francis Bacon. That's a lot of... They put a lot of effort. I recommend. All right, enough about Blind Dweller and their superior work. Tiltic says, yes, thanks for the advertisement in the great epic Minecraft server. And Tiltic is a very talented artist. And that's one thing that you can do on the Discord server as well, is do some self-promotion. Tiltic has their TikTok account on there. Some really, really good art. A lot of skills. Oh, I Guzzle Twinks is in there. Hello. Welcome back. Nobody, welcome back. Hello, nobody. All right. Let me start the stream as I often do by showing you what movies I watched. And at the risk of disappointing you, I only watched 2 movies this week. But I had very strong opinions about both. And there you go. All right. Let me show you. This is me. And these are the videos I watched, the movies I watched, just 2. And the first one was Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. Don't ask me why we watched it. I guess as a meme. But the movie felt like a caricature, and I thought it was a joke at the beginning, especially with the bad CGI and all that. And turns out they were actually serious about the movie, which was kind of funny because I thought it was a caricature. And I gave it half a star because it's a caricature that's passing off as something real, and they spent a lot of money on it for a very, very mediocre movie. I don't know if anyone would like to defend that movie in chat, but if you do, you run the risk of getting banned. I don't want no Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness apologists in chat. And we also have Harakiri, which was amazing. Completely on the opposite spectrum. I rarely rate any movie, as you can see, but Harakiri, I gave it 5 stars, and I even liked it. I gave it a little heart. And funny thing, when I watched Harakiri, I was like, this movie has such a strong, yeah, there you go. For those who want to read it at the same time, has such a strong social commentary. And yeah, don't call it a movie, please. I imagine you're referring to Doctor Strange, not Harakiri. But yeah, no, Harakiri has such a strong social commentary in it, and it's such an incisive movie and narrative for that social commentary. And I felt like it was very leftist, but I wasn't too sure if it actually was motivated by leftism. And turns out, you look into Masaki Kobayashi, turns out he was a socialist. So it's like, oh, all right, there you go. That's why his social commentary was actually so on point and so good. And I encountered that. I didn't know anything about that movie, but I looked into the. All right, it's gonna be shameful, but I selected it through those TikTok filters that just selects one of Letterboxd's like top 100 films, and they just put the thing on top of your head. And I was like, all right, I'll watch whatever it gives me, and it gave me Harakiri. And turns out that it worked out. Who would have thought that TikTok would be good in that in that sense? Yeah. Well, I'll sorry. Nobody says socialist. Nice. Yeah, it's not only a critique, I believe, because I'll read critiques of capitalism in every movie that I watch, if they're actually movies and not Doctor Strange. But Harakiri is a critique of, at least from what I think, a critique of property or private property, and through that, critique more strongly of tradition and honor in terms of socially and in terms of personally, and the conflicts that both have. I'll make a summary really quickly because I really think it's an important work of art. It's 2 hours. I know most of you are not going to watch, and I'm not going to spoil, but I'll try to like convey a sense of urgency. I want you to watch this after the stream, though. After the stream, it's on Criterion if you have Criterion, and it's a samurai who, well, it's the whole idea of Ronins who are samurais without masters anymore, and Ronins, like their ultimate honor apparently is to commit harakiri or seppuku, which is basically just disemboweling yourself, and apparently that has a very strong spiritual, and it's significance, and it's actually a good thing, which is ridiculous. And I think the movie realizes and comments that it's a ridiculous thing. And in this context, a lot of Ronins who don't have masters are starving. They don't have someone to pay them, right? And they don't have from what I can understand, they don't have the power or money to buy their own, to buy their own land or whatever. They can't be employed for some reason. I don't know this history enough, but all they tell is that a Ronin can't be employed because other people want to be employed, and if you're skilled into like swordsmanship or whatever, you can't get the jobs of normal people. And so what Ronins have started doing is Ronins, if they want to commit harakiri, they have to do it in a temple, in a way, inside of a master's palace, in a way. That in that case, it's not going to be their own masters. So what they do is they knock at people's at their temple. I don't want to say temple, but I guess that's what it looks like. They knock at their temples, other people's temples' doors, and what they say is, "All right, can you please let us in so we can commit harakiri?" And a lot of people don't want to do that because it's kind of they don't want people to literally kill themselves in their temples. So they say, like, they give them money or they give them food and they tell them to go away. So now you have this precedent that's been created. Or another thing is a Ronin will go and will say, I'm willing to commit harakiri, and the master will say, oh, because you're so full of honor and you're willing to actually commit harakiri, we will give you a job as a samurai in our estate or in our clan. So more and more Ronins started doing that without the actual intention of committing harakiri. So they knock at people's doors. They're starving. They're in terrible conditions. They knock at people's doors. They're like, we want to commit harakiri because we have nothing to live for. But they're doing it not to actually commit harakiri, but to get either money or food, or to actually get an employment from the master. And now you can see how the whole social commentary about private property that I find can be seen. So basically, but the masters see this as a really it's dishonorful. It lacks honor in the sense that you don't actually want to do harakiri, so you're trying to boast as if you're so great, but you're not. And therefore, you should actually commit harakiri even though you don't want to. And they force Ronins to commit harakiri even though they don't actually want to. And this whole idea of tradition and of honor, and the interesting thing is that the masters see the Ronins as people who are, bad people who are trying to just take advantage of the master, because they're faking as if they're playing the rules of tradition, but they're faking, so they're dishonest, and therefore they're the bad guys. Meanwhile, the masters are withholding their riches and their wealth at the expense of someone starving. And since you take part, you're on the side of the Ronin, you see that the masters are the bad guys, and that someone who is not honoring their harakiri because they're starving or because, you know, for whatever reason, are actually the good guys, even though they're lying, even though they're going against tradition. And it's making you, it's confronting you with that class consciousness. And I think because of that, it's an interesting, like it's a fascinating movie that you should go watch. And to add to that, and I don't want to spoil, so I'll just give you the themes. But there's a revenge plot, but not a corny revenge plot. It's actually a really good revenge plot. And added to that, there is this whole idea of confronting people with their ideas of tradition and their ideas of honor, and showing how it's just a facade. I think that's literally the words they use, that these traditions and this honor is just a facade. And I love that, because how many people in chat know how much a lot of customs, a lot of honor, a lot of especially in more conservative leaning either communities or even families, it's just a facade, right? The whole idea of no sex before marriage is a facade. Everybody knows that, right? All of these things, all facades. People expect others to go to do the traditional, you know, to adhere to the traditional values, but they don't do it themselves, and they would never. Anyway, all this long tangent to say, watch that movie. It's worth it. It's 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. It has honor is a social construct, says nobody. Everything's a social construct, though. But honor is one of them, a very strong one, and a very socially constructed one. And no, it's incredible. The whole idea of confronting someone who's about to kill you for honor, but making them realize that themselves, they don't even uphold that honor. And like for 1962, 1960s, it's a Japanese movie. I feel like that must have hit hard for a lot of people in Japan in the 1960s. It hit hard for me. Anyway, watch it. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Hello, Anthony Barsness. I spoke a lot, and then I didn't look at chat. I'm very happy to see people are reacting. I don't know if has anybody watched Harakiri? Talking about, yeah, Doctor Strange. It's Sam Raimi. It is definitely a joke. Yeah, I did not expect it to be like that much of a caricature of itself. SB says, just tuned in. Can we do a small recap? Yeah, we're talking about, for now, we're talking about just the movies I watched. And the only good movie I watched was this one, Harakiri by Kobayashi. And I was telling people to go watch it because it was really worth it. Incredibly worth it. And also, at least for me, I think it's like the first Japanese movie I've ever watched. And for like 1960s, it aged incredibly well. Maybe not the fight scenes, but there's not that many fight scenes. You would think that there are, but there aren't. Fight scenes were all right. Yeah, Kenji says Harakiri comes to my never-ending movie list. Yeah, that's an issue that it's same for books, same for movies. Anthony Barsness says, honor is a social construct of rural peoples. There are no honor cultures in urban areas. Interesting. I wonder if it has something to do with um less the like the cultures of like the like urban and rural, and more to do with the conservatism that you'll often see more in rural areas. Because I'm sure in urban areas, in more conservative cultures, we'd see the honor cultures very like to be very pervasive, right? And there's also this whole idea that in rurality, everybody knows each other, and your name and what is associated with it is very important. As in urban areas, your name and what is associated with it doesn't matter. You can be whatever. I remember I went to college in a more rural area. I made friends, and then once college was over, a lot of us went back to Montreal, which is more urban. And out of like the handful of friends like that came with me from that rural area to Montreal, I think two of them turns out they're gay, right? And it's like because I feel like the you have this freedom in urban areas to not have to adhere to codes or like strict social codes. Cadaver Film says the title always horrified me. You mean Harakiri? Yeah. But it does talk about suicide, but not in not badly. It's and definitely doesn't glorifies it. It's actually really well at least especially since it's coming from like the 1960s, right? It's very well managed or treated. Hello, past human. Yeah. Actually, you haven't if you haven't watched it, watch it. Oh, Serin Shibani says, and hello, Serin. First time I see you, but they say this channel is probably the reason I've applied for art history in uni. That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear it. I hope you enjoy it. I really hope you enjoy it. Roby says, never watched any anime. I I'm not a weeb, and I will die not being a weeb. Anthony says, I went to film school in Japanese 1940s, 1960s films are art. Yeah, that made me want to watch more. That made me want to watch more. And I wish I knew more about the context of 1960s Japan. But uh, like the whole idea of using 1600s, feudal. I I don't want to betray my ignorance about 1600s Japan and the whole clan system. I don't know how it works, but the idea of criticizing today's um, systems by looking at the past, I think it's always a very powerful way of going about it. Especially since if you want to, we were talking about that yesterday in Discord as well. Nationalism and appealing to that nationalistic, or that at least going back to our roots as a people, and being able to criticize those roots. I feel like that can be very powerful in terms of creating social change. Yeah, Roby says urban areas aren't inherently isolating. No, they're not. Um, in some ways, rural areas can be even more isolating um, if you don't conform to a lot of the codes and to yeah. Cadaver Film says, "Can I recommend a new film?" Always, always. Nobody says you can watch some anime without being a fanatic. Or yeah, I know. I was joking. I was joking. Muse of Salzburg. Hello, Muse. A lot of new names I haven't seen before. And if you've commented before and I'm saying that I've never seen your name, I'm sorry. Have you ever heard of Occupy White Walls? It's a sim game where you design and curate an art museum with real art. Super cool. I've heard about it, but I haven't checked into it really. I wonder how popular it is. I don't know. I I don't even know if I would play it. Roby recommends Princess Monocle. Tiltic says you should watch Blue Period. It's definitely not an anime about art. Not at all. As long as it's not an anime, I will check it out. No, I know I've heard about Blue Period, and the reason why I've heard about it is because there's my video on Blue Period by Picasso has a lot of comments of people saying I actually came here for the anime, and turns out like Picasso did a Blue Period as well, which I find kind of funny. Look at Picasso. Like, did Picasso watch that anime and get like, did he get like really inspired by that anime and started doing blue paintings? Anthony says 1960s Japan was a defeated culture. After World War II, they romanticized the past in almost a funeral-like perspective. Very interesting. And that harakiri would mark itself as like as a as a way to criticize it instead of romanticizing it. I imagine. I don't know. Roaming Symphony. What is this channel about? I'm new here. Welcome, Symphony. Roaming Symphony. Channel is about art history, where we talk about everything but art history on stream. We were talking about Harakiri, a movie by Masaki Kobayashi, which I really enjoyed. We're going to talk about landlordism. Is that something I wanted to talk about? We talked about it a bit yesterday in Discord, so I wanted to have some thoughts. And yeah, we're just hanging out. We're just having fun. We're just chatting. Nothing too serious. It's my highlight of the week. I've been looking forward to it and always like discussing with people. Yeah, Naro might be right. Since Picasso stole all his ideas from anime. Now that you mention it, I'm starting to see it. Ibini, it's this. It's a. I always feel like when I put it like that, I look like the girl with the pearl earring. Always. So I'm leaving in the back because I don't have any pearls. All right, so let's get right into it with landlordism. And the reason why I want to get right into it because I get tired at the end, and then it's such a big concept that I want to attack, and I want to do it right away before I get too tired. Dim Kilago, you should watch The Lighthouse from Eggers. I know. In my last stream or the stream before, I said I didn't watch it. I tried watching it like 2 or 3 times, but it starts off with a fart joke, and I have a very hard time watching it because of that. All right, let's talk about landlordism. So The difficulty with talking about landlordism is, all right, I want everyone in chat, everyone who's watching, or on the second channel, Germinal, I want everyone to put their little thinking caps, and we're seeing it as we're gonna attack this subject as a social problem, not as an individual problem. We're looking at the system itself. We're thinking about it in terms of its systemic implications, its systemic ramifications, its consequences, and we're not looking at it in terms of individuality. All right, everybody, put your little thinking caps on. We're looking at it systemically. We're looking at it in a very smart way, and not in a, well, my landlord is actually a really nice guy who only owns one building and he's doing it as like a side hustle. All right, we're looking at it systemically. And the reason why I want to look at it systemically is because for many issues, if we want to understand them, we have to understand their broader utility and their broader consequences on the way we live. And if we look at it only in terms of individuals, we miss the forest from the trees, if that's the right way to use that term. So, and one of the reasons why I want to talk about it in a systemic way as well is because it's kind of inevitable if you want to critique or criticize landlordism, is you have to look at it systemically. But looking at it systemically comes with challenges. My personal criticism of landlordism comes directly from my criticism of private property. However, I don't want to attack it through that lens of private property, because I feel like if someone understands the criticism of private property, they will either be a socialist or they already have their minds made up about the whole idea of landlordism. So I think you can't attack it through the lens of private property, and that might be for another discussion. And it's a very, very difficult discussion, and it's a very important one, but maybe not for attacking landlordism. And the reason why is because I think private property is at the roots of a lot of issues systemically. And I think, for example, if you want to criticize cops or the institution of cops, you do it through private property, at least for me. But at the same time, if you are too theoretical about it, people will not accept your criticism of cops through private property. They don't see that relationship. And I think there's other ways of criticizing cops, the same way there's other ways of criticizing landlordism. And the way I want to criticize it is through its inherent contradiction with the whole idea of meritocracy. So the whole idea of meritocracy is that when you do labor, and if you work hard enough, you are compensated for that labor, and you merit it. It's like in French, mériter means you deserve it. So the whole idea is if you work hard enough, you deserve the fruits of the labor that you do. The whole idea, though, the whole criticism of meritocracy is that's not actually how it happens, how it works in real life. It's great on paper, but not actually good in real life. Probably heard of that. Maybe not about meritocracy, but for meritocracy, it's perfect for that. And all that being said, if you look at labor that deserves to be remunerated, a lot of jobs fit in that category. But landlord is not a job, in the sense that a lot of people would argue that you don't deserve the money that you're making because you're not actually contributing or actually doing labor. Now, we will I'm already hearing all the criticisms of my criticism, all the answers, and it's like, well, landlords, they can fix up the plumbing or whatever, and that is true. but landlords who fix up the plumbing are doing the job of a plumber. They're not doing a landlord's job, and you can give them money as a plumber, but you can't give them money as a landlord. And let me guess, your landlord who's taking care of the plumbing is not being paid the salary of a plumber. If he does 2 hours of plumbing in 3 or 4 months, he's making a lot more money in the end than a plumber is. So he's not being paid to fix up your apartment. He's being paid for being a landlord. And what does it mean to be paid for being a landlord? Well, if we take that idea of meritocracy again, income comes from labor, or from the idea that you deserve it. At least that's how we see it. If you work hard enough, you can make money. But landlordism, or becoming a landlord, is very openly passive income. And what is passive income if not just accepting the idea that you're not doing much and you're making money out of not doing much? And a lot of people would call this idea of passive income, especially through landlordism, as something that is parasitic, because you're not doing anything and you're able to make money from it. There you go. People are saying they're leeches. And Past Human is right. Landlords usually employ maintenance workers. And that's something, because I've got stats, and we're going to go over those stats, and we're going to try to attack the criticism of landlordism through those statistics, which are, by the way, provided by a service that benefits landlords. I think Barnes Nest says, do you disagree with passive income altogether? I do. I mean, it depends. I think there are ways of passive income being fine in terms of, like, let's say copyright, in terms of let's say you write a book, right? And you write that book and it sells, and you get like money from it. It's passive in the sense that you don't do anything with that book anymore, but all the prior work for making that book is now being paid, and it's also funding your next way to do a book. But that investment is done with labor and not necessarily with money. I think passive income can be very destructive, or can be, my criticism of it is that it's money that generates more money, and you do it without having even to put your hands on. And the reason why that's bad, or why my criticism of it is essentially that it's particularly bad, is that if people who have money can make more money by having money, then it creates that split, or that creates that class divide. Even like it makes for a more unfair society. And landlordism is a way for people who have money and who are making money by having money take money from people who don't have enough money to make money with money. In a way. And my idea, like, I want to preface this also by saying, we're in the middle of the segment, but I want to say that I don't like the institution of landlords, but I know a lot of people don't like that, but I prefer having a leftist landlord than a conservative landlord. I don't like the idea of people being incredibly rich, but I'd rather have a leftist billionaire than a right-wing conservative billionaire. For harm reduction, and I think we can criticize the system, and not necessarily because landlordism is not leaving anytime soon, and I think having these discussions is more productive than actually criticizing people for being landlords. Anyway, just understanding that landlordism is bad, I feel like it's closer to the end goal than to shame people in being landlordism. Because if you shame people into being landlords, what you're going to have is more shameless landlords. Anyway, all that to say, yeah, Tim Harris says, can a leftist be a landlord? I think so. I think a leftist can be a landlord. Um, like the same way I think a cop can be a leftist can be a cop. Um, we all work within institutions that are inherently bad, and I feel like again, if a landlord, because I think there can be good landlords in the sense that they're better than the others. The institution itself is problematic. It's exploitative, but the same way I think a business owner can also be a leftist. Engels was a leftist, right? That's a really common. Kenji says, is a left-wing billionaire even possible? I think so. I think so. Is it common? No. No. It's theoretically possible. Practically, people who have that much wealth usually tend to protect it and protect the interests that come with it. But I think in theory, I think it's possible. But all that to say, let's go back to landlordism. I don't remember exactly where I was. But the whole idea of merit, we were talking about the idea of merit and the whole passive income. So the whole idea of passive income actually curbs the whole idea that landlords actually do something. And most landlords, at least in the US, and we'll see that with the stats, are actually big firms. So they're making money without actually having to intervene or actually having to do any work. So that idea that landlords actually have to work is at least to me, though they might have to work, they're still making a profit, because if it wasn't worth it for them, they wouldn't be doing it. And I think if we want to systemically criticize landlordism, instead of going through private property or criticism of private property, as I was inferring earlier, what we can do is explaining how landlords are not actually doing anything in the first case. And if they are, they're not being remunerated for the thing that they're doing. They're being remunerated for the property that they're holding. And second, I think that we can speak to people by saying that you're basically, what you're doing is you're paying rent to a landlord. If you're a tenant, you are paying rent to a landlord. What you're doing by paying rent to a landlord is you're paying their mortgage. So you are spending, let's say you're in a place for 5 years. All that money that you're spending in your mortgage or in your rent, you're not going to see anymore. You're basically giving it to a landlord. That landlord is using it to pay their mortgage. And the difference here is that once you're gone and once that mortgage is paid, the landlord can sell his property at full price and cash in all that money. And what you're doing is you're basically accumulating the wealth of that landlord for him by giving him what I would call a tax. What he's doing is taxing you, or what they're doing is taxing you. And the reason why it's bad, or if it's even worse, is that there is no alternative. And that's one of the big reasons why landlordism is bad. Because, for example, if you go to a motel, I wouldn't be against the whole idea of motels or hotels or bed and breakfasts or whatever, because those actually give you a service, and it's not actually to live there. You're doing it as a way of, usually it'd be like a maximum a week or two. I don't know. I haven't been in a hotel or motel in a very long time, but that I'm not necessarily against that idea. But when you live there, that's when it becomes more exploitative, because there is no alternative. You either go back to your parents or sleep at a friend's, which is not possible for a lot of people. And actually the only alternative is being homeless. And being homeless is illegal, practically. And it's also not something that we should, it shouldn't be an alternative. So because of that, even the state recognizes that being homeless is illegal. And and heavily discouraged by all our systemic infrastructure, we have to agree that our standards for housing need to be elevated and need to be and the consequences of having housing so necessary makes it so that there's a leeway for exploitation. There's a leeway for exploitation for anything, I believe, that is necessary. Food, for example. Let's say food was really, really expensive. That's what we call an inelastic demand. If food is really expensive, what are you going to do, right? You can grow some potatoes in your backyard, but eventually you'll need some more. You'll need more than that. And if food becomes increasingly expensive, then what are you going to do? It's either you starve or you just give more money to your grocery store or to whatever supplier. And that's an elastic demand, and it leaves room to exploitation. For food, it hasn't been done yet. It's coming. But for rent, we're seeing it being done more and more. Rent is increasing, and what can we do about it? Can't do anything. And that's one of the reasons why landlordism is exploitative. And I feel like I've made my case for systemic criticism, at least in terms of without taking private property. But one thing I'd like to do is go over, hold on. Because I think that it's a pretty simple criticism, and I feel like it needs to be simple in order to understand it. And I want to go over these statistics to understand landlordism and to understand also the consequences of such a system. So we have here 35 insightful landlord statistics, 2023, and it's made by Flex, which is a company that is, and what they do is create a way for landlords to get paid. So for property managers, as you can see here. So if they were to be biased, they'd be biased in wanting to have more landlords because that's how they make money. That's their whole business model. So there's like a lot of points, and we're not gonna go over them all, because there's 35 of them. But I want to go over the ones that are important for the point I'm making. And some are not important for the point I'm making, but they don't necessarily go against the whole system. Like, for example, the whole mom and pop's landlord kind of defense. In terms of systemic, it doesn't address a systemic. It's just taking individual. It's like if you're criticizing police in general, and someone says, "Well, I know this guy, and he's a policeman. He's really, really nice." Anyway, so we're again systemic thinking cap. So the first one is 10.6 million Americans earn income from rental properties, which is all right, fine. Landlords have an average income of $97,000 a year, which is absolutely insane. It's, I believe, more than double than what usually tenants make, and that's a lot of money. A lot of money to, and it supports the idea of it's like a kind of a passive income. You need a lot of money to become a landlord, and when you're a landlord, you make more money. It creates this class divide even more. Mom and pop landlords own 20.5 million rental units. All right, that's fine. The average landlord has 3 properties, which is good to know. We'll actually read the thing. On average, landlords have 3 properties to their name. The value of those properties isn't necessarily through the roof. 40% of landlords own less than $200,000 worth of property. In addition, 30% fall in the 200 to 400K range. Only 30% of landlords own property worth $400,000 and more, with 7% at the top owning properties worth $1 million. It's also important to think that even if it's just 7%, in terms of 7% out of 10.6 million is still a lot of people who are owning properties worth than $1 million. But again, I don't feel like this is, well, the average landlord has 3 properties can be problematic in the sense that a median would be more representative of the average landlord, because there is what you call, I don't remember the name, but like those financial institutions that all they do is, it's like a landlords plus or super landlords. And there you go. Half of all landlords manage their own properties. 45% of landlords manage their own properties. That means that 55% of them actually don't. So the whole idea that landlords actually have to manage and do, and like that's why they're paid for what they're doing, is, at least in the case of 55%, which is a majority, not the case. Yeah, they hire someone, and it would make sense if you're making like 100K or over in a lot of cases, and that's just the average. A lot of people are a lot more wealthy than that. If you have that much money, you don't want to spend your time, managing your properties, especially if you have a lot. If you have, 6, 7, 8, sometimes it's hundreds of doors. There you go. Here, 25.8 million rental units are owned by businesses or partnerships. That's more than mom and pop. And that's a lot. And these businesses and partnerships are not managing it on their own. They're not. You're just a way for them to make more money. They're profiting off of your need to have a place to stay, and from the shortage of places to stay for you to actually go to. $25.8 rental units are owned by some kind of business entity. 25.8 million rental units. And I've been in one of those buildings, and you will never see the owner or owners, and they don't need to see you. Everything is run by managers, run by janitors, and that's what landlordism is basically designed to be, a passive income where you make people work, and basically they make profits off of this whole business. Real estate investment trusts. That's what I meant by those big corporations. 115,000 rental units. Investor home purchases plummet more than 30% in Q3. I imagine that's a good thing. Because one of the issues of landlordism, we're coming through a lot of those. The whole idea is a lot of people who see houses as an investment are more willing to put their money, because they have more money because they can invest in a house. So what happens is it rises the prices of houses in general, because they're willing to pay not to live in it. So they're not seeing it as an expense, but they're seeing it as a revenue. So if between myself and a landlord, let's say I'm someone who's looking to buy a house, and I have enough money for a down payment, just enough money, blah, blah, blah. And this other guy, and I want that house to be able to, now I'll see it as an expense, obviously, but that guy right next to me, who's a landlord who's going to make money off of it, doesn't see it as an expense. He sees it as revenue. So, and he has a lot more money on hand to either pay more for the house if he thinks he can make more money off of it. But I'm not thinking in terms of making money. I can't make money if I live there. But he's making money off of it, so he can pay more. So what's going to happen in terms of like when the house market is restricted or limited, that guy's going to buy it because he has more money, and he has more connections with the financial institutions because his investment is more secure than mine. Obviously, he can pay it back, or he can pay back his loan, let's say, faster, where I can't. And that guy, what he's going to do, he's going to pay that house. He's going to buy that house. And what am I going to do? Well, if I'm strapped with money, if I can't find anything, well, I'm going to go to the house he bought and pay his mortgage for him, and maybe a little bit more, so he can pay for a janitor, or maybe not a janitor for a house, but pay for the expenses. And in 25 years, once the mortgage is paid, that guy can sell it. He hasn't paid a single cent in mortgage, and he'll, let's say he can sell the house for $300,000. He's getting that $300,000 in his pocket. I get nothing. because all the money that I've invested in renting was actually his mortgage. So I'm out of there in 25 years with nothing. He's out of there in 25 years without doing anything because I'm paying his mortgage and he's good. And I hope by giving those situations, we see the exploitative nature of this system. Half of single property landlords purchase the property as a primary residence, and that's the whole idea of a mom and pops, like, you know, buying that house without actually seeing it as an investment necessarily, or as a way of making profits off of it. So that's not necessarily a systemic critique that many people will see. Rents increased more than 24% on average between 2021 and 2022, which to these guys is a good thing. That means, oh, your return on investment is going to be even higher. That's a really good thing. But for people who are trying to live, and for humans who are not soulless ghouls such as landlords, that's not a good thing. The fact that it increased more than 24% on average is terrible for everyone except for landlords. And that's just a way for them to make more money off of your hard-earned work. And if you're a conservative, what is a tax if not that, right? They're making money just from the fact that they own the place, not from actually giving you a service or anything. They just have the paper to own it. That's a tax. They have no other right to that money aside from saying, if you don't have that money, you can be, you can basically, the alternative to be on the street. There's a form of coercion there, and that coercion is basically taxes. Landlords have raised rent rates an average of 31% since 2010. To them, again, it's a good thing. To average people, it's not. And I hope that through that, you can see also the class antagonism. They have different interests than you. During the last decade, rent increases outpaced wage inflation by 270%, which again to them is a good thing. That means that it's a good investment to make, which it is. It is a good investment, but that just shows that it's a good investment to do. 48% of landlords have asked a tenant to leave early. I don't know if anyone has had that experience. It's a really shitty experience to have. If you live in a house, if you live in a place that you have made your home and you're asked to leave, right? That's another way landlordism is bad. Because if you own your house, or if you have a right to your house or to your place, then that place is yours and you can call it home. But you always have, and here you have 50% of landlords have asked tenants to leave early. That means their tenants live in this precarious situation where they don't know if that house or that home can be theirs in a way. And that's a really, really bad situation to be in. And it's one that is exacerbated and enabled by landlordism. The idea that people can't even feel home in their home because it's someone else's. And that someone else doesn't see you as a human, but as a way to make profit. And if you're not making them profit, they have no incentives to keep you. None at all. And this is evicting a tenant may cost a landlord up to $10,000. Says here can be low to 3,500, which is often a thing that landlords will say, like, oh, like if a tenant is a bad tenant, then I can't, they're going to ruin my house and I can't even evict them. And I have a hard time tackling that idea, aside from this, the fact of saying, well, yeah, maybe we shouldn't, maybe landlordism is a bad idea. If it's so hard for you to be a landlord because you're not allowed to put people on the street, if it's so hard for you to be a landlord because you can't evict bad tenants, right? Then maybe landlordism is not a good idea to begin with. None at all. The whole rent debt in the United States, $15 billion in rent debt. That's a lot of debt. And yeah, no. I've paid now they're getting paid kind of points, which is what they do. Individual landlords collect $34,000 a year on average and pay $23,000 in expenses. I wonder if they include expenses, their mortgage as an expense. If they do, they're making a lot of profit, which is insane. Making $10,000 a year by not doing anything. And in these expenses, let's say there's a plumbing, you can actually pay a plumber for these expenses, right? If there's an electricity or whatever, you can pay a plumber for, or you can pay whatever, a handyman or a janitor for these inside these expenses. If that's including that, you're making a lot of money, again, for just holding the right to that property and being able to tell someone that this is mine, and if you don't comply to, or if you don't pay me, you're out. Also, expenses are deductible, tax deductible. That leads to a profit of just $10,000 per year, a profit margin of just 30%, 30.8%. For not doing anything, $10,000 a year. And not only are you not doing anything and you're making that money, $10,000 per year, but once you want to sell that house, you're getting money from just its increase in value. So you're not, like, I doubt that they're also calculating the rise in value of the house that they've purchased and that they're also benefiting from. But they won't say that they're making a lot of money, because if they do, then people might actually criticize landlordism and their parasitic. Another thing, approximately 6% of rental properties are unoccupied. If to you it's worth it to wait for the housing market to be more, to make you more money, it might be, in some cases, it might be better to have an apartment that's empty than an apartment that has tenants in it. Which a lot of people criticize, because when you have people who are homeless saying, well, I'd rather wait before housing people, because I want to house people with more profits in mind. And anyway, I wouldn't want someone who's homeless to be in my apartment. So I'll just wait for the right person and leave, people basically living in miserable conditions on the street, because that's not a good return on my investment. Oh, they talk about the property values right after the point there. There you go. Screen 2 applicants. Only 89% of landlords cover property repair costs. So if you have 11% of landlords, which is a lot of landlords, keep in mind. That's more than 1 in 10. And on, 40 million landlords, 10% of them, which is 4 million landlords, don't pay the property repair costs. If something breaks, if your sink breaks, if your plumbing breaks, you pay it. If not, good luck doing your dishes. Landlords handle 6 repair calls a year from tenants about property repairs. That might be true. And again, but I don't think it's landlords who handle them, because we already established that in 50% of landlords are actually businesses, and it's not the landlords who actually take care of it, it's janitors. I don't know if they handle it or they just call their janitors to take care of it. 13% of landlords change light bulbs for their tenants. Remember when I said that there's some good landlords? They change their tenants' light bulbs. Talk about being a good landlord. Those are the 13% leftist landlords I was talking about. I have a hard time believing that landlords with up to 4 units average $383 to $450 in expenses per unit per month. That has to be a that has to be including mortgage. Let's see. It has to be. If anyone owns a place at all, or they own a condo or a house, whatever, you don't, and that's not even a house, that's for a unit. You don't spend $400 per month in unless maybe heating is paid, is electricity paid. I don't know. But for a unit, I feel like that's a lot, and that might be just landlords taking out their tiny violins to justify their exploitation. 2/3 of landlords are college grads. Yeah. Rich people get richer. Rent payments on the first, accept personal checks. I don't care. 41% of properties experience some form of vacancy every year. Criminal background checks, credit checks, credit checks. %30 of individual investor landlord households are low to moderate income, because $90,000 is, I guess it's moderate. I wouldn't call it low though. Among landlords, households earning less than $50,000 rental income represents 20% of earnings. So guys, landlordism does take some people out of poverty, all right? All right. Bottom line, all right, don't read this. Bottom line is landlordism as we see, and I hope this helped to actually see how bad it is or how parasitic it is, and how they see it as a way of making profits. Oh, by the way, Okan Aslan, thank you for becoming a member. You're like the 3rd member on this channel. Thank you. I've never really pushed memberships or whatever, but thank you. It's really, really appreciated. Any support is extremely appreciated. Thank you. But yeah, no, it's parasitic, and I hope that if you're ever put into the situation of being a tenant, I want you to, and most of you already know, but I'm talking about people who might not even know or even conceive of landlordism in that way. But I want you to understand that you're paying your landlord's mortgage, and your landlord is profiting off that mortgage. And not only is he profiting off that mortgage that you're paying, he's also getting profit from you paying your mortgage and a little bit more than that. And if you want to buy a house, good luck, because you got to save up for your down payment, but it's very hard to save up for a down payment if a lot of your money every month is siphoned by the landlord. And on top of that, if we're not even considering the down payment, people ask, like the banks ask for a very, let's say a yearly income, and they'll say, all right, here are all the expenses associated to owning a house. Can you pay for that? And they'll decide if you can pay for that or not. And through that, well, you realize that actually being a tenant is more expensive than owning a house in terms of making monthly payments. That includes insurance, heating, electricity. It might be more expensive to actually be a tenant, and that makes sense, because if it was more expensive to be an owner than a tenant, then tenants wouldn't be making money for the landlords. So you need, in a way, to give profits to your landlords. You need to pay more than the minimum that it costs to be a tenant to make your landlord profit. So all that to say, it's a very exploitative system, and you need to be able to see that if you're if you're in the situation of being a tenant. And if you're not in the situation of being a tenant, at least try to imagine it. Try to imagine it. It's very it's not that hard to imagine being a tenant. I'm saying that as someone who was a tenant for a while, so it's like, I think it's not that hard. And it's not hard to conceive of you just paying someone else's mortgage, which, for those who don't know what a mortgage is, you're paying for someone else's house in a way. They take out a loan to buy a house, and you're paying that loan for them. And while you're paying that loan for them, you're also paying them. So not only do they have that house paid for them by you, they're also getting a bit of pocket money, because you need to stay a place and they own the places. Yeah, even nobody says, yeah, just to rent, you have to save up for a deposit as well. And Anthony says, how do you think we can remove landlords without imposing additional labor and time on the renters? Like how we can remove landlords? There's ways of removing landlords, and one that's very popular. The whole idea is decommodifying housing, and decommodifying housing just means houses are no more a commodity, something to be sold and to be resold, to be added value to. It's a basic human necessity, and giving it a price tag has really, really bad repercussions on our way of living. And a lot of people's a big part of their paychecks is actually spent just to live somewhere, which doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that way. And it's not like landlords are actually adding any value to anything. We can think abstractly. If we're like, all right, there's enough houses for everyone, we just need to distribute them. Everybody gets a house for free, and you don't have any mortgage, and everybody has like a lot of disposable income, even more, or they can work a lot less. I think everybody wins in that circumstance. Now, how do you distribute those houses? Where do you? That's a whole thing. Another way of making it easier, or at least to make it like in a transitional period, is by nationalizing housing. For those who don't know what nationalizing is, I'll give an example. Here, electricity or power in general was nationalized by the government. So now the electricity is the responsibility of the government, and all the profits generated from electricity or power go to the government as a form of income for the government, which they can distribute to the population either through social services or tax credits. And that, I believe, is, even though as an anarchist I'm very how do I say, skeptical of the state, I believe that this can be, at least for now, the easiest way of seeing how housing can be decommodified would be through nationalizing housing. And rent, for example, in electricity, in Quebec, we have some of the lowest electricity costs in the country. Not mostly because of our infrastructure, but also because, well, the state decides how much money we're making, and the state's main goal is not to make profit or make a buck out of our need to heat ourselves and not, freeze in the winter, but they do it because that's sustaining society, right? And I can see the case being made for housing as well. Housing can be a lot cheaper if taken in by the government, because they're not trying to make a profit off of it. And also they don't have to pay mortgages, or they don't have to, all of these things that come with it. Basically what I'm saying, imagine this one big business that has like, 10,000 rental units, and they have managers, they have janitors, and those people do all the businesses, all the organizational work. And the big business, instead of being someone who is doing it all for profit, is traded in for the government. And then you can have laws to make it less expensive, and control rent costs and things like that. Anthony says, I like the idea, but also, how do we convince investors to spend time and money on building on a property without that incentive? I live in NYC. My apartment building wouldn't exist without money incentive. Yeah, I think the government can do it. In a completely decommodified world, in our beloved anarchist society, I think people would be building houses if there was a need for them, to house people who don't have a place to stay. Now we need financial investment, because if we don't make money off people not being in the streets, then there's no reason for doing it, right? So in that case, if we live in a world where there needs to be reasons to house people, then I think that the government should be in charge of those reasons, instead of giving money to people for doing it, so that they can make profit off of it. Exactly, empathetic Rambo. The only people who contribute to the maintenance people are the maintenance people who work for the landlords. They could just work for a tenant union or the government. I love the idea of tenant unions. Moonchild Signification says, your landlord isn't the one fixing themselves. We saw in the previous, when we looked over the when we looked over the how do you call it, the statistics, that no, a majority of landlords, at least in the United States, don't fix themselves. My landlord do most of the repairs and maintenance himself. I guess that makes it overall cheaper. Yeah, and that is true. It makes it cheaper for the landlord. That's so that he can make more of a profit off of your conditions. And often, landlords don't actually make that much great repairs. They'll we've seen those memes of landlord repairs, right? Or landlord paint jobs. They do it cheap because they don't care about how you live. They care about getting money from you. And again, we're having the systemic cap here. We're thinking, we're taking a systemic lens. My landlord helps me out. My landlord, when he sees me, takes the grocery bags and helps me bring them in. Could be a really good guy, but it doesn't say much about landlordism. Yeah, and nobody's right in this case. It says, when people have a place to live and aren't in survival mode, they are more likely to contribute to the well-being of others. Absolutely. And they might be freed up to actually, like, let's say you don't have to give a quarter of your income to just house yourself. And a quarter is generous. Like, most people spend more than a quarter of their income to just house themselves. In that case, they can either reduce their hours at jobs that they don't like, so that they can actually do what they want and contribute to society in a way that they find most suiting for their abilities. But it can also give them more money to actually, invest in other places, or invest in their own house, right? let's say 30% of the income that you usually put into actually paying the house to someone else, you actually invest it in the house in itself to improve it, to improve its insulation, to make it, anyway, I feel like there's yeah, Munchausification says, I'm very fortunate to have a great landlord, but most doesn't, I guess, yeah. But it's not even about having a great landlord or not, to be honest. When I lived in a big corporate, I don't know how to call them. The name was there earlier. I don't remember how to call them, but like a corporate place where it's all, a big business that deals with it. I never met the landlord, and it didn't matter if I met him or not. The landlord doesn't give a fuck about me. I don't give a fuck about the landlord, right? It doesn't matter if that person is a good guy, or in that case, it's probably a bunch of investors or, a bunch of people around a table at the top of the building where I lived. I imagine that's how I imagine it. But it doesn't matter if they're good people or not. They're faceless, profiteers. It's even if they were really, really nice, it doesn't change the systemic implications of their role and of the way they're making money off of my necessity for. Yeah, Hawk coming in, flying in. I'm not building a house for other people I don't even know. You're gonna have to threaten me or bribe me, like they do in non-hypothetical communist societies. Yeah, this hyper individualism is the reason why we have homeless people, and we justify homeless people. Oh, those damn capitalists. This little family can't build a house, can't even afford a house. What? We're supposed to build houses as communities and help them out and make sure that most people are happy? No, not in my territory. You know what? I'll build a house and then they'll have to pay me for it. And I'll profit off of it. And they'll do it because they need a house. And they'll be impoverished by it, but at least I'll be making money. And if they didn't want to be in that situation, they just had to be rich like me. And like I'm pulling your leg, Hawk, a bit, but like the whole idea that you're gonna have to threaten me or bribe me to like build someone else's house, like this whole idea of threat and bribe or whatever, like this idea of coercion, is so important to understanding landlordism, because people are coerced into being tenants. Because most people systemically don't have the money to buy a house, and it's made that way. House prices have gone up. Most people can't afford a house. Most people my age, I'm 26, most people don't even think of being able to buy a house. And it's made that way so that you will be a tenant your whole life. That's coercion. It's not done through a gun. It's done through systemic. And that's why I want people to put their systemic little hats on. And that's the whole idea of property, right? The whole idea of private property, which is coercion in itself. One day we'll talk about private property. But there's coercive elements to it. The whole idea that, oh, well, if you don't like me as a landlord, or you don't like this, go somewhere else. It's like the somewhere else is either another landlord, buy my own house, which is not as we've established, not really an alternative for many people, or be homeless, right? Like, it's either like you're either a tenant or homeless for many people. Don't tell me that's freedom. Don't tell me that there's no coercion to that. It's you're paying someone else's mortgage, or you're on the street. But communism is the ones who are coercive, or communists are the coercive ones. Yeah, Okan says Istanbul, Turkey is experiencing a severe housing crisis due to high inflation rates of over 100% and an overpopulation of 20 million people. This has resulted in increased racism, with refugees being unfairly blamed for the issue instead of the government. Yeah. But no, don't worry. Capitalism is the best that we can have. Don't worry about it. Yeah, Kenji says like a quarter of your income goes to housing. In Munich, the monthly rent in your one room apartment is as high as the loan of a minimum wage job. Yeah, I know. No, a quarter is being very generous. Nobody says if I wanted to build houses for me and for others, I would need to have land first, and that's another thing. Private property, we don't even have land. Yeah, absolutely, Alexia. It's a systemic thing. Anthony mentioning Adam Smith. I'm gonna have a bit of fun here. I do think Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market is true. Capitalism is naturally and simply the hand of God. I am a Marxist and I love the idea of communism, but we aren't smarter than nature. But I don't think capitalism is nature. And also, if we want to talk about Adam Smith, let's have a bit of fun here. Adam Smith and landlords. Let's just find the quotes. I would love to have the quotes on hand. We're going to have to trust a Reddit article, which I will. You can criticize me for that. Not a Reddit article, but a Reddit post. But it's known that Adam Smith criticized landlords. It's a well-known fact. Here you have Adam Smith spoke of landlords as cruel parasites who didn't deserve their profits and were so indolent that they were not only ignorant but incapable of the application of mind. The rent of the land, therefore, actually, I can probably do this to help you out. Whoa, sorry about that. That should be good. The rent of the land, therefore, considered as the price paid for the use of the land, is naturally a monopoly price. It is not at all proportioned to what the landlord may have laid out upon the improvement of the land, or to what he can afford to take, but to what the farmer can afford to give. Chapter 11, Wealth of Nations. This is just Adam Smith. Let's go back to Wealth of Nations. Landlords leaves the worker with the smallest share with which the tenant can content himself without being a loser, and the landlord seldom means to leave him any more. Oh, here, Adam Smith was passionate when he typed his Wealth of Nation in caps. Rent, considered as the price paid for the use of land, is naturally the highest which the tenant can afford to pay in the actual circumstances. In adjusting the lease, the landlord endeavors to leave him no greater share of the produce than what is sufficient to keep up the stock. Anyway, all that being said, I do agree with Anthony that capitalism did emerge, and that's one of the reasons why I'm against the whole idea that that we can create systems without actually applying them. Because I don't think systems can be created; they need to be shaped by experience, shaped by by historical, not necessity, but by practice, right? through trial and error. And in that case, if you have already an established model, so many things can go wrong. And that's one of the reasons why I'm an anarchist and I don't have like a pre-established model. But I think that's it for landlordism. I don't know if anybody had anything else to add. I think it has the merit of being clear. I think most people understand. One day I'll talk more about private property. Yeah, Tim Harris says, I think primitive accumulation is an important capitalist economic process to contextualize landlordism as well within. Yeah, and I think it's important. Same thing for like the whole idea of private property is important. But at the same time, if at least when you talk to like more conservative people or people who are not really into the whole idea or into the criticism of landlordism, saying, you know, primitive accumulation of capital might not get to them. I really think that's saying like, oh, like the rate of profits on rent, that's taxation, but not taxation for the government, which can give that money back into social services, but it's taxation for the rich, right? Who what they will do with it is not up to you at all. Oh, Hawk coming back, flying, gliding, says, I'm half joking as well. And I take your point about coercion in this current system, but people are selfish and using money instead of guns to motivate themselves. To motivate them seems better. I don't know. It seems better to coerce through money than through guns. But like when you say coercing through money, is just saying you will, you know, the alternative is starve or suffer. And there's a perniciousness to the alternative being suffer, because you actually don't see it as coercion and it hides. So you have a system with an upper class that coerces the lower class to, you know, to do their biddings, but because it's either like do this or starve, people don't necessarily see it as coercion, and I think there's a problem with that. With guns, you see it as coercion very honestly, and it's easier to pinpoint the oppressor or the people taking advantage of the system, and that can be changed. When it's money, you don't see it, and you see it right now. There's wealth disparities that have been created better than any gun could, right? And also the whole coercion with money is backed up by the guns of the police force. If people wanted to take down the system or like challenge it, guns will be used against those people. They have been used in the past against these people. So guns are still there as a backup. But yeah, no. And the whole idea people are selfish is true in the sense of in a hyper like capitalistic and individualist society. But at least where I live, a lot of people just help. Like when they built their houses, it was their brothers, it was their family usually, and probably part of the community that built houses together. They didn't have money. They were too poor to be able to pay other people. But it's like, all right, like Jean-René needs to build a house, you know? He just got married. Do we have an empty house that he can buy or that he can afford? Like people didn't even pay for their land. It's like, all right, Jean-René needs a land. The father's like, all right, this is your land from the land that I inherited from my forefathers, and you're inheriting this land for yourself. It's just part of my land. Oh, and you need to build a house? Well, you can't do it yourself. All right, let's build a house together. People didn't have money for that. Is the headscarf deliberately red and black politically or aesthetically? I don't know. Politically, I wouldn't have this, the maple leaf. I feel like that's kind of cringe. One day I'll Sharpie over it to make it black here. I guess it's aesthetically. I don't know why I have clad all over in my wardrobe. Yeah, Kenji, I heard about Vienna as a really good place for at least relatively for housing. Kenji says Munich and Vienna are both university cities. Vienna understood this and built a lot of social housing for students. In Munich, only rich students or you are in a frat or you don't study there at all. Yeah, and that's another thing, making housing affordable is not only good in terms of keeping people off the streets, but also giving opportunities to people. In that case, especially like in university cities, even if college is free or very cheap, unlike in the United States, people still need to live in the city in which the college is, which is not like which is in itself already a very strong, like a very big expense, or can be. Yeah, yeah. Tim Harris, yeah, Tim Harris was right about the primitive accumulation, having to use language that Hawk says. That's an interesting point about coercion. Is it about like the visibility of coercion? Like, for example, guns being visible can be fought or at least identified, while coercion that's not visible, it's it's the whole distinction between the two books Brave New World and 1984 is that one is coercion, one isn't, or no, both are coercion. One is explicit coercion, and one is like implicit in a way. Um, and when analyzing the form of coercions of our modern day, like it's a lot more implicit than it is explicit. But coercion is there nonetheless. Yeah, Alexia's right. Most people agree with Marxist ideas when you drop the lingo too. Hey, Roby. I think the first was it my first stream. I mentioned that quote about Anatole by Anatole France. The law in its majestic equality forbids rich and poor alike to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal their bread. Hawk says, "I agree about people care about their family and community and are not selfish with respect to them, but this breaks down to a scale of millions of people. But I'm not sure about that. Because first, there will always be communities within scales of millions of people, but also if if it is possible to build houses, let's say, because we have to get out of the capitalist logic, like we have to unroot ourselves from the capitalist logic. But imagine a place where like things are decommodified. So like building materials are decommodified and are being used as they are needed, right? And people have people work not as an actual like not as out of necessity, but out of actually solving issues in their communities. So, for example, when it comes to building houses, let's say we're a group of 10 guys, and we want to start building houses in our communities. That can be made possible because first we don't have to work to be fed. We don't need to have our 9-to-5 jobs. We're freed. As long as we contribute to society, we can benefit from the fruits of society. It's the whole according to their need, and their ability. So this idea of like, oh, we can get 10 people together and build a house, and we can do that because because that can be the job that we give ourselves, and people will recognize the worth of that job because it's needed. And the whole idea that, all right, well, there's people starving in the streets, not starving, people are unhoused. As a community, it's either, well, there's nobody to invest in building houses anymore because we're post-capitalist society. There's nobody to invest. We have the workers, we have the materials, we have the will, we have a need, but there's nobody to invest. So we're going to leave people outside. It's like, no, we can still do these things, and we actually benefit from everybody being housed. And I feel like it's easier to see that, especially if you live in a community. You want your community, you want people to be housed in your community. You want people to be, fulfilled as much as they can be. And right now, there's a lot of barriers within capitalism that stops you from being able to fulfill those needs. For the fact that people need to work for themselves or work, for their own benefit, instead of for the benefit of everybody. And anyway, well, yeah, there you go. Nobody already mentioned that before I even did. Capitalist systems create the need for selfishness. I think people are more than just selfish. It is an either or. Humans are selfish and selfless. Yeah, and we talked about that. The whole idea of like selflessness is selfish. I want to live in a community where people are happy. And therefore, because I want to do that, if I'm freed up from this individualism that capitalism imposes on me, then I can go help out someone building a house. And a lot of people can if they're freed up from time, from the necessity of having 9-to-5 jobs. And also, the whole idea that people are being paid to build houses is also preventing me from helping them. Because why would I volunteer for someone who's building a house when they're paying everyone $20-$25 an hour, at least in my over here? That's low. So why would I volunteer if I know that I could actually make my time profitable? This whole idea of making your time profitable, of not doing voluntarily. It's great to be a volunteer and everything, but like when your time is commodified, all the incentives are there to stop you from being a volunteer. And most volunteer work now are more for like community organization. It's not that much for like actually another individual, because we're like helping out another individual is some people do that, but it's de-incentivized in capitalism. And then he says, we have contemporary examples of the difference between communism and capitalism in practice, China and America. Both are very capitalist. I would argue that China is more capitalist than America. Both have atrocities and both have advantages. I tip the scale to America, though. Yeah. I also tip the scale towards the less capitalist America. If you want less capitalism, go to America. If you want more, go to China. Oh, Nero is popping back from doing chores. Y'all being good? I think so. Talking about capitalism, talking about landlordism. We're done talking about landlordism, but who would have guessed we're talking about capitalism after talking about landlordism? I also disagree with that, Anthony Barsness. But if he says, but if your time isn't commodified, no one will do the dirty work. We would all volunteer for the fun work. I like if we take your example and boil it down to its like absurd conclusion, it'd be like, all right, nobody wants to do I don't know. Nobody wants to clean the streets, right? And then everybody just lives in a filthy community their whole lives. And they're like, ugh, if only someone would clean those streets, but I don't want to do it because I don't want to volunteer to do that. But the idea is, if there's a need, people will work to fix that need, especially if their time is not commodified. If my time is commodified, I don't want to do the dirty work because I could do I could do work that actually makes me money and that I can actually enjoy. But if my time is not commodified, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And eventually, if the streets are getting really unclean, then I can do that because my time is not only directed at one task. And you can get a community together to clean the streets because we all benefit from the streets being clean. And the whole idea that if there's nobody to force us to clean the streets, then we'll just let the streets be disgusting. If there's nobody to force people to do trash collection, then we're just going to live in trash. It's the whole idea that communities can't manage their own problems unless there's coercion, unless there's an authority. And I feel like it's normal to think that way if you're born into authority. But like, if you use a bit of, I think, common sense, people are not just, all right, well, if there's nobody to force a group of people to collect the trash, we're going to live among trash for the rest of our lives and we can't do anything about it because we can't force anybody to do it. I feel like that's a bit absurd. And also the whole idea of when it comes to like deciding who does the dirty work, right now, like we're deciding like people who do the dirty work is often poor people. We're effectively a caste system. Poor people, all right, you do the dirty works. Rich people can do the good works, the good works, the good jobs. All right, you're poor, you're looking for a job. Well, all right, we got this job that, might be, you because you need money, you can do that. You can do that job, because if you don't do that job, you either do another shitty job and make less money, or you just starve. So it's like coercing people into doing shitty jobs. The whole idea of coercion as well. That's true. Roby is absolutely right. That's another point. People being responsible for the dirty work also gives more of us incentive to improve the conditions of the dirty work. Yeah, the whole idea that, all right, if because we can't coerce people into doing shit jobs, then we need to make that shit job less shit or less shitty. And I feel like, that's positively a good thing. It's a bad thing when you think of a way to make profits, because you profit from this job being shitty because you don't have to invest in making that job a better place, a safer workplace. Safer workplaces, better workplaces require investment, or require at least a bit of to go back on your profits. But in a world where profits are not the end all be all, you can actually make those shitty jobs less shitty. And if those jobs are shitty and people don't actually need them, like let's say, for example, like the classic fast food job, those jobs are shitty. And if they're shitty and people don't want to do them, all right, so how will we fare without a fast food restaurant? People will be fine. So maybe we don't need those jobs. If people actually want fast food so much, some people will take up the task and actually build a fast food restaurant, or take the infrastructure that was already there and make a fast food restaurant. And that will be made by people who actually want fast food. But if there's no need for it, in terms of can we do it without coercing people, then we don't need that place. For example, that sewage work, for example, that is a dirty job. Do we need sewage work? Yes, we do. Can we coerce people into doing it? We don't want to. So how do we make people work those jobs, right? Well, the fact that we need it is an impetus to make people want to do it, because we have this understanding that if nobody does it, then we're in deep shit, quite literally. But there's also the whole idea that, all right, let's make that work less dirty. Let's make that work better. Let's improve the infrastructure to make that work more enjoyable, if it can be enjoyable. Yeah, that's, or we can actually invest to make it, automated. TomTom Trent says, yeah, it's just, it's like I just volunteered picking up trash yesterday. Why would anyone do that voluntarily? Right now, there's no incentives to do it voluntarily. Because everything we do is commodified. If we want trash to be picked up, it won't be through voluntary action. Because when people do labor, they expect to be paid. Because thus is the capitalist logic. And if you want let's say your place is unclean, what will you do? You'll ask the city to hire people to clean it. But in a world where when you work, you don't get paid because everything's decommodified, then cleaning trash can be part of the things that you do, right? You can have a committee of people picking up trash because it's needed. And while you pick up trash, maybe you don't like it, or maybe you're like, all right, I'm doing my part. I'm happy with it. This is fine. Well, while you do that, someone else is doing the sewage work for you, so you don't have to do it. And someone else is doing garbage collection. Well, although picking up trash is the same. I don't know. Whatever dirty jobs there are, people will do them, expecting other people to do these other dirty works. And you can do that without being remunerated, because your time is not remunerated in any other cases. Yeah, and John Manol is, by the way, hello, John Manol, I never saw you in chat, says, in my country, you are considered a fool if you do anything for free. And that's the logical conclusion of capitalist the capitalist logic. And the whole idea is, if there's no other reason of doing things, because right now everything that we do is for money, usually. Not everything, but a lot of the labor that we will do is for money. We associate labor to money. If I say labor, you instinctively think of a wage or whatever. But if the labor that you do is not for money, then you have to think, what is it for? Right? It's either I don't do labor at all, or I do labor for another reason. But what would be that other reason? Well, making sure that the society from which I benefit functions is a good reason, I believe. The whole idea that we could not think of that reason as a community is ridiculous. All right, now we'll leave all the infrastructure crumble because we don't have money to force us to do these things. I'm answering like comments really like far after they were made. I'm sorry. I will continue apologizing about that. Hawk, I really strongly disagree with that. To ensure necessary labor allocation without a market, you have to tell people what to do. So you can't just build a house with your 10 pals because all of you have a gun to your head doing some job. You don't have to tell people what to do. Your idea that for a society to function, you need coercion, and you need either a gun to your head or you need to, threaten people with starvation to do that job is, I don't know. It's, to me, it's really, really sad to think of the world like that. I don't think like this. It's like, I think that is what people would call capitalist realism. The whole idea that there is no other way of going about doing anything without coercion, you know. And it's like, it's always been that way, and it will always be, and it's coercion. Like I said, you don't have to tell people what to do. If there's a need, people can fix that need by themselves. Like I said, let's say we're in a community, or like in a neighborhood. It can be even like in an urban area. You know, we have a block or whatever, and that block is like, all right, we have a sewage problem in the middle of our city, and it's flooding everything. Your idea is either we force people to fix that problem, or we just wallow in the sewage for the next couple of weeks because we don't know what to do, because we can't force people to do it. I think like a good way of seeing it is like, you can think of like a how do you call it? A post-apocalyptic like scenario, right? Where it's a zombie apocalypse, everything crumbles, and then you're like 200 people, 300, 400, 500 people building up a community. You would argue that you either need guns or a monetary system to ensure that everybody works. I would argue that the 500 people would be like, all right, we need people to make sure that we have clean water. All right, who wants to do that? All right, people all right, people put their hands up. All right, we have 10 people who go take care of the water. All right, we need people to get some food. All right, some people go get some food. All right, we need people to like cook that food. All right, some people go cook that food. All right, we need some, and you can do that collectively as a community, you know. And then a month or two into your community building, you're like, all right, holy shit, there's this need that we didn't like think of, but we need this right now. What can we do to fix that need? Oh, some people volunteer to fix it. Because if nobody volunteers to fix that need, then everybody is hurt by that lack of need. For example, one of the best examples, I think, is voluntary firefighters. Firefighters that are doing it voluntarily, right? We need firefighters, in case people don't know. And I know some voluntary firefighters are not actually voluntary, they're actually paid, but in some cases they're actually voluntary. And they're voluntary firefighters, and they're not doing it for money. And they're doing it because there's a need. Because you know that if there's no voluntary firefighters, then fuck, we're in deep trouble. And some people are going to suffer. And let's say there's a shortage of firefighters, of voluntary firefighters. Well, you can start paying them, or you can just tell the community, listen, we really need firefighters because we're running low, and like if there's a fire, we're not sure we could actually take care of it. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of voluntary people who will go, all right, yeah, where do I sign up? And apply that to other different like spheres of society. You can do it without coercion. You can do it without, you know, guns or the threat of starvation. And that's the kind of community I want to live in. That was a big tangent. I love Hawk, by the way. I love being able to answer to those answers. I think Hawk's interventions are important. Yeah, I think they're important, and I think they're also intelligent observations and responses. and they also give me things to say because I could tell people, yeah, I agree with that, but it's not as spicy or as interesting as someone actually giving counter arguments. And I'm trying to read everything. I don't know where we're at. Still trying to figure out how to the power to tag people. Oh, Gatsby is dead. Hello, Gatsby. Or Gatsby is dead. What's happening? Narrow summarized it really well. We're talking about the ethics of organizing within a communal space without landlords and government structures. Not just the ethics as well, but like the how would we do it? Because capitalist realism makes us realize that there is no alternative, as Thatcher would say, right? There is no alternative to organizing without capitalism. I'm trying to say that, yeah, I think there are alternatives. We just lack the political imagination for it or sociological imagination for it. Narrow with the volunteer firemen. Sorry, sir, no one put out the fires because no one gave them money. Then you have just a bunch of starving firemen on the side of the sidewalk, going like this. Please give us food so we can fight fires. Give, or maybe they're actually like fine. They're not starving. They just want money. Like we're not. Wait, you expect us to give you free labor? If you want us to fight that fire, you either give us money or point a gun to our head, or else we're not doing it. Matse Nash is asking a really good question, saying, but in all your examples, it is small communities. How will this work on the scale of a city or a state or a country? What about worldwide? I think in terms of I guess it'll depend. It depends on your vision of the world. I always believe more in a smaller scale organization, and the reason for that is the larger scale organization that you live within, the more as an individual your power is reduced. And if you believe in democracy, you have to accept that your power as a citizen within the United States, for example, is diminished to a point where it's not uh, even remotely valuable or even like of any relevance. So I strongly believe in like smaller communities, even like within cities, right? Within cities, you can have smaller communities or smaller blocks, uh, that in terms of organization at least, where you can vote, where you can have assemblies, and you can have that's how it works. It's when it comes to like larger organization, you can do it through you have that already working. You have smaller organizations with delegates that will that will all get together as a bigger organization, and that's basically what like that is what you want in as representatives. Is those representatives are supposed to be delegates at, like, for example, the chamber of I don't know what it is in English. I think the Commons, House of Commons, or whatever. So you have delegates. The community gets together and votes on delegates, so that those delegates can defend the opinions and the contributions of their communities, and to like and all those delegates can vote together for example, the broader function of society in terms of like larger and eventually worldwide. The UN would be like that kind of worldwide organism, um, but with less and less power as you go up, obviously. The whole idea is I think small scales. Small scale is the way to go. Just because not only in terms of giving power to the citizen and the individual, which is so much easier to give to a small scale, like in a small community, but also, and I think more importantly, to give a sense of belonging to the community, which we don't have right now necessarily. Some people do, but a lot of people don't have that sense of belonging for community. And it's easy to not like to think, why would I house this family for free, right? We're very individualistic, but at the same time, it's because we don't have this community feeling that many of us crave anyway for. And I think that a small community gives you more power as an individual, but also gives you a community to participate in and engage with. But at the same time, that's my way of seeing it. But like, if people want to get into bigger communities, smaller communities, hell, if they want to be like alone, that's up to them. I'm an anarchist for that. I don't want to. I'm not going to tell. All right, these lines are the ones within this community are going to be are going to administer themselves. These lines is where this community are going to administer themselves. Like, they can clump them together, whatever. Do whatever they want. I think each community's situation is going to differ, and they will do whatever they need to live in the best community they can, and they're the best people to determine that. Narrow says, it's common practice for streamers to just read at the timeline spot that they're currently in. Listen, Narrow, I'm not your average streamer, all right? I'm different. All right, and you're gonna answer to this to what I'm saying right now, and I will answer back to it in 15 minutes. And you know what? That's my strategy to have audience retention on streams. People just need to wait 15 minutes for me to answer their comments. So that makes it creates anticipation. John Manole says, what's your name? Because I don't know how to address you. You can call me Sean. Or Mr. Canvas. Some people on Discord decide to call me Mr. Canvas. So that works. Yeah, Kenji is right. Teachers, despite being paid partly well and not very appreciated in Germany, rather made fun of. We have a lack of teachers now. Yeah. That's one thing. Like, money is not the only way of having people get a job, or incentivize people into a job. Teachers, nurses are known to not be super well paid. Same thing again from last stream. Let me fix that. I'll be right back. Hold on. We'll put a pin into that comment. The funny thing is, I never have that happen at all. Last time this happened was last Sunday. So it only happens on stream. So and there's a fan next to it that I turn off while stream is on. But while stream is off, this fan is always on, and it's always blowing on the curtains, but they only come off when the fan is turned off, I guess, when the stream is on. Anyway, I wonder how I imagine Ballet, what Ballet's gonna do is clip that part when I got scared and make fun of me for it. But yeah, to go back to what we were saying with Kenji, yeah, there are jobs that are paid for different that are paid poorly, but that people will still do, not for the money, but for the either the prestige or just for for what it represents, right? And Rio's inspecting the damages that were caused by the falling curtain. And Rio's gonna join us. There he is. No, no. He's taking some of my water. All right. But yeah, no, there are ways to appreciate people's work without without money. There are other ways for people to do work instead of money. There's a reason why, for example, people get really outraged when when minimum wage workers, such as fast food workers, get paid more than they are. So let's say, I don't know, you work really hard and you're paid like $18 an hour. And then you see some fast food worker being also paid $18 an hour. And people are angry at that because they're like, I'm working hard and I'm being paid the same wage than like this fast food worker. But this fast food work, like if you feel like it's so unfair, why don't you do the fast food worker's job? Right? If it's so unfair, and if that job is so much better in terms of, you know, its conditions and everything, that you prefer working a fast food job than working your job right now, then why don't you just change jobs? You don't, because there are other reasons why you're doing this job and not the fast food job, even though the pay is the same. And there was this, I don't remember who it was, this philosopher. I imagine it was a philosopher because it was in a university class, a college class, with medical students, people who want to be doctors. And he asked the students, all right, how many of you would give up being a doctor if instead you could be, you know, insert shitty job here, like fast food job worker. So instead of being a doctor, you'd be a fast food worker, but for the same wage. Well, most people, you could have the wage of a doctor and work as a fast food worker, and those doctors didn't, or those people who wanted to become doctors didn't want to do it, because the issue here is not the money, it's the prestige, it's the what you want to contribute to society, it's how your abilities can be fully optimized for your own self growth through your contributions to the world. All those things are important, but we don't see them because they're obfuscated, they're obstructed by our need or our perception that labor equals money, labor equals wage. That wage is the only reason why we would work in the first place. Thank you, Kenji, for that comment. Hawk again saying, I love you too. You have a big heart, but I think you underestimate how lazy and selfish people are in society when they don't have immediate feedback on their own actions, like they do in a family commune. Yeah, I propose I propose a commune, but yeah, we disagree on that. But Anthony Barsness is going about, I think, gender stuff. I don't know. Uh, John Minol says, would I react to other YouTubers who discuss politics of this sort and stuff, or this sort of stuff? I could. I I I would need to react to like things I know I would disagree with, because or else it would make for bad react stream, I guess. Um, I would do it in the case of like something I know I would disagree with. So either like a defense of, for example, landlordism, or the PragerU video is really good for that because it's something that I'm, about art history. So that tied in really well. But I would need like people to send me videos for that, or send me the videos either through Discord or Instagram, and I could react to them. It would give me content to do, but also, I don't know, it could be a good diving board to actually talk about these topics instead of just talking about them out of nowhere, just like that. But at the same time, I don't really watch those videos. I watch other YouTubers who discuss politics and this type of stuff, and they do react to videos, but at the same time, I don't want to react to the same videos as them because I would probably say the same thing as them in the first place. John Mill says, Sean, what's your opinion on communism? I'm an anarcho-communist. I'm an anarcho-communist. I made a video. It's on my second channel if you want to check it out. How I became an anarchist, and I talk about that. Anthony Barsness says, "What's the difference between a fast food cook and a Michelin star chef? They both provide the same materials service." Ethan answers, the status for one, Michelin star chefs receive more in terms of status. Fast food has a much more negative opinions in society. Yeah, that's one of them. I'm sure money also is a difference. And also the clientele is a difference. But the status is one of them. Roby says a lazy stream of you reacting to a lazy stream of Hassan could be entertaining. Yeah, I'll just sit back and watch Hassan. I've never actually watched Hassan, not live, and sometimes I watch segments, but very very rarely. Only when the clickbait is really good. I'm not sure what Anthony Barsness is on about. Astro, never seen you. Astro says, I hate Hassan, but to be honest, why? What's the criticism of Hassan? I'm interested. I don't have strong opinions on Hassan just because I'm not part of that community. I don't watch it. I'm subscribed just to like I said, when the clickbait's there, I click on it, but that's very rarely. I want to know what the criticism of it. Take a shot every time he says, "Dude." Yeah. Yeah, John Manol says, my country was communist, and for me and many fellow countrymen, it was at best a bitter experience. Yeah, I don't know which country you're referring to, but if you're critical of capitalism but have a very sour taste about communist experiences, there's many communists who disavow the communist countries that or communist experiences that happened. But anarcho-capitalism, anarcho-communism is might be a good path to explore. Yeah, with the USSR. Interestingly enough, and maybe one day I'll make a video about it, but like many anarchists have criticized the USSR before it even happened. I think Bakunin, who died decades before the USSR even happened, said that communism, if it was to be made through like communists, Marxist communists, would become a red bureaucracy. uh, Astro answered to the I don't know. I just feel like he's a hypocrite and doesn't really practice what he preaches. Yeah, well, practicing what you preach is yeah. It depends. I for example, like I don't practice what I preach, and I feel like that's fine. Um, because when it comes to especially systemic critiques, and we talked about that earlier, like I feel like what's important here is understanding the systemic implications of well, this understanding the systems and understanding that your place as an individual is so small and so insignificant. I mean, if you go out of your way to not, to do the opposite of what you preach, but I think hypocrisy. To be honest, it's not. It's not something that I care that much for, because I'm more about the ideas. And if there are actions, the actions need to be systemic. If they're individualist or like on the individual level, it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. Unless it's like, I'm saying it doesn't matter, but like, for example, like, let's say like you're a pacifist and like you're actually like a domestic abuser, then that's bad, obviously. But like in terms of like, doing things that are ethical, just not, well, I don't know how to explain it. Can someone be an anarchist capitalist? Says spilled salt 46. I've never seen you. Glad that you joined the channel, that joined the chat. Can someone be an anarchist and capitalist? No. There are people, libertarians will sometimes call themselves anarchists or anarcho-capitalists, but that's just failing to see the hierarchical nature of capitalism. A lot of people equate freedom and capitalism, and anarcho-capitalism or anarcho-capitalists make that equation, but anarchists historically and like anarchist theorists have always been critical of capitalism, seeing it as one of like a lot of people would say that capitalism is more hierarchic and more liberticide. Is that a word in English? Less, it gives less freedom. Liberticidal. It is. It is a word in English. Liberticidal. We're learning things together. Yeah, some people, a lot of anarchists would say that it's actually more liberticidal, or that capitalism kills more liberty than the state does, especially nowadays. We've been getting into, John Manol says, getting into Max Stirner. Yeah, we were talking about Max Stirner the other day. Where did Bakunin talk about the red bureaucracy? Let me look it up. Sorry about that. Letter to the Red Menace number 4, what Bakunin said. That's what I got here. Either one destroys the state, or one must accept the vilest and most fearful lie of our century, the red bureaucracy. Then he would also say things like freedom without social. I'll just show you. Freedom without. I've heard that one before as well. Freedom without socialism is privilege and injustice, and socialism without freedom is slavery and brutality. Things like that. I wonder if we have like a better. Letters to the Red Menace, number 4, what Bakunin said. Anyway. There's also Emma Goldman, who was very critical of the USSR. The American Bolshevik says, I hate when people use the term systematic to criticize a system that they themselves support. I believe that supporting a system individually, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Like if you truly believe that your individual action or your individual engagement or disengagement with a system is affecting it whatsoever, I think it's delusion. I don't think it matters. I think you can be very critical of the system and still partake in it, and through your participation in it, support it. You have little choice, and if you're able to not support, like participate in it, and you're gatekeeping your movement by saying people that you should, like, if they want to be part of your movement, or you hate when people say that they're part of your movement, but like they're participating in the system that, you know, or they support the system that they criticize, then you're not going anywhere. If you want to tell people like, oh, you want to become like an anarchist, oh, you want to become a communist, oh, you want to be a socialist, oh, you want to destroy capitalism. All right, great. But you have to do this, that, or else you're a traitor, or, you know, I hate it I'll hate it if you even have an opinion about capitalism. If you buy on Amazon, you're part of the problem. No. Yeah, the American Bolshevik is right though about this. No, not possible. NCAP is just neo-feudalism. If you put anarcho-capitalism just to its logical conclusion, it becomes feudalism for sure. Roby says, we haven't seen Ballet enough this stream. I hear Ballet furiously typing in the back. I don't know about what though. Rashab says, liberticidal seems like something you want to prevent. Yes, we want to prevent liberticidal. There's a huge conversation about gender in here. I don't know where it is, where it's at. I don't know how to partake in it. Catgirl 2002 says you can make change through activism. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. You can do activism. You can do propaganda, but the idea that you can enact change through your lifestyle, that to me is problematic. you can be hypocritical in the sense that, you know, your lifestyle is at odds with your ideas. But at the same time, you know, if you have a preferred lifestyle, and we tell people, like, if you're critical of capitalism, I feel, and if you're critical of capitalism and of its effects and its dangers and its, you know, please put your mental health in, like, first. And I feel like if you're very critical of the world and you understand its injustice and you're very involved in it, it can have a really huge toll on your mental health. There's something called like activist burnout. And I feel like many of you will agree with that. You see the world going on and you're like, this is terrible. You know, even if you're not anti-capitalist, it's easy to see that, you know, we're, even, you might say like capitalism has gone too far. Like, call it consumerism, whatever, right? If you're not capitalist, if you're a capitalist, at least say like, oh, consumerism is going too far. Even then you'll agree with that. And I feel like fighting it is going to have a toll on your mental health, because you like, we're talking about that with veganism as well. You're so emotionally involved and you suffer from what's going on in the world. And if you give yourself, and if you want people to join you in that, not that suffering, but in that, you know, class consciousness, or that consciousness of the world being so terrible, you can't expect you or other people to change their lifestyles to something that they don't even want to, but that they're doing just because they feel like it might improve the world, when it's not. Live the lifestyle that makes you feel the best. And if you want to change the world, do it through activism. But your lifestyle is not the best avenue. I feel like that by changing your lifestyle, it can be good for your mental health to change your lifestyle, if you think that it can make you feel better about yourself and your position in the world. But at the same time, if it's making you miserable, you know, if you're deciding to not watch, I don't fucking know. If you're like, I used to love The Mandalorian, but Disney is such a terrible company, and I will boycott The Mandalorian, and like, I will boycott Netflix, I will boycott Amazon, because I don't want to participate in that, you know, in those cultures. And then you isolate yourself from like watching those, you know, those cultural products which you used to love. Like, you're just contributing to making your life worse. Yeah, watch The Mandalorian if you like it. It might be hypocritical because you're very critical of Disney or whatever. But yeah, like Catgirl202 said, you can make change through activism. So do it through activism. And then on your free time, on your spare time, when you want to decompress from the mental toil that is your consciousness of world problems, watch The Mandalorian. It's going to make you feel better. And that's just an example. It can be anything. Nero is right, though. It says the ability to disengage from the omnipresence is typically indicative of extremely fortunate personal circumstance. But at the same time, Nero was in that discussion in Discord. We did talk about how a lot of people, like, there's also like the ability to disengage from the omnipresent is typically indicative of extremely fortunate personal like circumstance. But there's also a privilege to be able to. There's a privilege to like to be able to be aware and be critical of all these issues. Some people have no. All they can do is watch Mandalorian and work, and as soon as they think of world problems, they can't. They can't. They don't have the time. They don't have the energy to do that. There's also a privilege to being able to I think, to be able to think about these issues. There's also a privilege to not being able to think about these issues. I don't know Michael Malice, by the way, Anthony. I don't know who that is. Yeah, I talked to SB Says, and again, someone who I've never seen in chat before. Glad to see you. What do you think about the end of history idea about capitalism and the thought that there's no alternative? Yeah, I discussed it just briefly not long ago. Something that sometimes I mention in my videos as well. I even mentioned it in Is There Purpose? Does art need purpose? And I feel like the end of capitalism, of course, it's not something that the end of history is not something that we agree on on this show, in this community. I guess it's not a very popular idea. I also already recommended the book Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher in a video I made on Banksy. Still talking about gender. Nobody says many people much smarter than me have argued that gender and sex aren't the same thing, and I agree with them. I'm not sure I am up for arguing it personally right now. It's such a tiring conversation. It's always the same thing. Gender is the social expectations and social like roles associated to, you know, that we give to, you know, to someone who is of a specific gender. It's like we give gender to someone when they're birthed, and that's correlated to sex. Sex is your biological, but even then, it's not always your biological things. Because there are cases where you can be born with both. There are cases when you can have different chromosomes without even knowing, because nobody knows their chromosomes unless you're doing really, really specific testing. Gender is social, like the usual consensus is like the simplification is gender is social, sex is biological. Spilled Salt 46. Sorry, someone new here. Do you guys talk about art or just anarchy? Sometimes art, but very rarely we talk about it. I think politics is good in terms of conversation. We could talk about art. I just don't know. There would be things to say for sure. But anarchy is more spicy. Just anarchy. Oh, XXXZZZ says, I ask questions about art clickbait, but no discussion. Yeah, and says that the definition of art clickbait is not very clear. And it's not. It's something I'm working on. It's something I just made up actually, so it's something I made up. It's like the whole idea that art is attached, like the appreciation of a work of art is attached to like it's something that will get your attention. For example, the skull, or for example, the nipple, or for example, whatever. You know, it's always going to be something that that grabs your attention, and not the work of art in itself. And that's the clickbait I'm talking about. And the clickbait can be good if the artwork is good, but very often the artwork is mid, but you get people to be interested in that artwork because of its quirk or whatever. Yeah, Rashab is right. Like, I ain't rich or famous enough to fight capitalism, but I can talk and support people who can. That's the thing. Like we're fighting capitalism like according to our ability. The American Bolshevik says, "What are your thoughts on leftist unity?" I think leftist unity is important, but at the same time, like that's the hard part. It's like where are the boundaries of unity, right? When do like, especially like when it comes to like anarchists and like people who some people would call tankies, right? That comes that's hard, because right now the big issue is capitalism, and we'll be honest, it's capitalism. The reason we like the state is less of I believe, less of a tendentious, like less of an important critique in that sense, um, because capitalism is encroaching a lot on our lives more than the state is. Like my criticism of the state is a lot less critical. Yeah, I guess critical than my criticism of capitalism, because the state has changed. But I do believe in anarchism for its rejection, and for the idea that that not only the society of tomorrow can be led by people themselves, but that a it ensures that a revolution, and it just sounds so crazy to just talk about revolutions like that so casually, because it's not going to happen. Um, but it ensures through anarchism that the revolution is made through the people and not through a vanguard, or through that basically the revolution is made by the people, which to me is a very, very important aspect. The whole idea that you can't liberate people; they have to liberate themselves, because it's not just it's not just an impression of conditions; it's an impression of like a philosophy of worldview. Like we were talking earlier about how like pervasive individualism can stop you from actually contributing to your society, because everything that you do needs to be associated to a wage. Like let's say there's no wages anymore. Well, that person, if they don't if they're not even familiar a bit to the whole idea of anarchist philosophy, or socialism in general, they can't, like, you will still have the worldview of doing things for your own profit, because that's what we've been molded by. That's what our parents have been molded by. That's what our grandparents have been molded by. It's doing things for profit. And then like in a couple of months, oh, now you don't do things for profit. But if you're not familiar with that philosophy, it might make the transition very hard. It's not something that I'm very comfortable with. It has to come from the people. Yeah, Catgirl 2002 says, search for positive news, new technology, art, music. It's important to have an optimistic view. Absolutely. Seeing the world through like all the bad news is like almost inevitable, but at the same time, you also have to try to find the positive in all of that. Very often the positive is that the more the bad news, the more people are getting conscious about what's creating that bad news. Pally G is busy eating crackers and cheese. Oh, Nero asking a good question. Do you have any thoughts on accelerationism? Aside from the fact that I have a hard time saying it. Yeah, I'm against accelerationism. Like it would be easy for me to be for it, but in terms of damage reduction or harm reduction, not damage reduction, harm reduction, I think it's important to be against it. I'm full on. Even I'm willing to like accept this, like accept aid from the state. And earlier I was talking about nationalizing some stuff, even as an anarchist, but mostly just as a way to reduce harm. And I feel like it's easy when you have either nothing to lose to be an accelerationist, or if you have so much that you can afford to lose to be an accelerationist. If you have nothing to lose but your chains, then yeah, you can be an actual accelerationist. But you also have to think of the people who have actual things to lose. And I'm not talking about like the bourgeoisie. I'm talking about, people who are living, you know, with actual things to lose, if that makes sense. What's going on in chat? I'm trying to catch up, but I'm not. I can't. Oh, hi, Lenore. Welcome back. Or yeah, welcome to this iteration of the stream. Says accelerationists must necessarily pay with the lives they claim to protect. That's the thing. It's very, it's rough for that. And if you're an accelerationist, and like let's say you do accelerationism as a communist or as a socialist, what is it? People are gonna hate you, and they're gonna see you they're gonna see you as the reason for being part of that problem, if that makes sense. Of course, you can do it without being on the as a communist or socialist, and you can just do it in the shadows or whatever, or vote for Republicans. But at the same time, you run the risk of being blamed for issues which initially were like issues of capitalism. SB says, it saddens me to think that engineering, which has done and can do so much in improving people's lives, is what originally engendered the Industrial Revolution and capitalism. Yeah. I mean, some people would disagree with you. You don't have to be saddened by it. Let's be optimistic again. The optimism is it's not engineering that engendered the Industrial Revolution and capitalism. It's the bourgeoisie who used engineering as a way of yeah, don't worry about it. Don't be saddened. Nobody's putting it on engineering's fault. I certainly am not. Math says, why don't you care for Renaissance art? I notice a slight disdain for it in your content. Yeah, I don't like Renaissance art. Not because not because it's bad art. It's just that the reason why people made art during the Renaissance is very different for than the reason why we look at art today. During the Renaissance, this idea of aesthetic beauty to be attained through careful like detailing and careful composition making was the peak of art. And today you can do a really beautiful painting and people won't care for it. And the reason for it is art has been intellectualized. And I don't think it's a bad thing. But when I look at art, I'm looking for the message, I'm looking for the ideas. And a lot of Renaissance art is not about the ideas or the message. A lot of it is religious, but it's about the way it is depicted. And it's beautiful. And I will admit that a lot of Renaissance art is beautiful, but I just don't care for beauty. It's not something that I'm that into. I'm not challenged by Renaissance art. And because I'm not, I have a hard time appreciating it. But it's not the fault of Renaissance painters. Renaissance painters didn't paint to challenge people. It's just a change in paradigm, a change in our appreciation of art as a collectivity. Hello, Abby. Abby's just Abby's just joined. First time I see them in chat, and says, just watched your video on Stanchik. Great channel. That painting is why I majored in art history and anthropology. Oh, great. I'm glad I made a video on the painting that made you major in art history and anthropology. Also, fuck landlords. Capitalism existed and thrived under Roman rule, though. I have no idea about Roman rule and capitalism under Roman rule. Narrow saying, look at this portrait of an inbred white person, bad art history classes. Like, I understand, like, to appreciate Renaissance art, you really have to put yourself, well, you have to like understand the context of Renaissance art. And it's very different from our context, obviously. And that makes it difficult for me to enjoy. And even if I understood the context, I don't know how much I would enjoy it. But if you are someone into like aesthetics and into making art that is beautiful, and if you like art for its beauty, then Renaissance art is all the way up, like it's perfectly down your lane. To me, it's not the whole idea, and I don't remember who said that. Maybe it was, oh yeah, someone said that. I kind of dismissed what's it called, Botticelli's Venus in my video on PragerU, but I feel like that's like, and they didn't like that, and I understand not liking that, but at the same time, if it's not engaging beyond what it appears to be, then why should I care? If I was a I don't know, a rich patron, if I was a Medici in Florence, I would care. But I'm Sean. I'm in 2023, and I'm talking to people online. It's a very different context. I think these conversations have been really great. I don't know if there's any other question. If there isn't, it's been 3 hours. I'll take a little break from streaming for now. Let me see. Yeah, Matt says, thank you for your response. I wonder that if there's any particular period of art that you find challenging or engaging prior to 20th century movements. Perhaps, but if I do find it challenging, and that's something that might answer better your question. If I do find it challenging, is in a contextualization of today, in a way. Contextualizing a work of art in today's standards, which to a lot of people that's not something that you should do. But for example, I looked at I made a video looking at the creation of Adam, and thought of it as a thought experiment on, you know, who created who. And I feel like in that case, it's not what the artist intended, death of the artist, blah blah blah, but it gives a second life, and it creates this challenge by recontextualizing or interpreting that artwork in a very different way, or a different lens, in a more modern lens. And I think that's possible, and you can still do that. And that's not for any movement prior to the 20th century, but it's definitely something you can do, and something I'd like to make a video on eventually. Oh, Natai, we're about to Natai writing, hello. We're about to end the stream. I'm sorry about that. It's been 3 hours. Rip Natai. All right, I'm sorry about that. We talked about landlordism. It was fun. We talked about capitalism, obviously, as always. Talked about Harakiri, a movie I watched, which I really, really enjoyed. I'm sorry about that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roby. That's really, really nice. Yeah, it's true. I could do that. I could do that. Ethan saying, have a good night. I imagine he's from Europe. Yeah, there's always the VOD. There's always the VOD. Or the segments on the second channel. Don't forget to check out the second channel. There's the Discord as always. And hopefully maybe next week or the week after, I'll be able to give you a little update. Maybe next week. Update on the zines. We'll see about that. Oh, it's called Harakiri. Harakiri. By... It's by Masaki Kobayashi. Merci, de rien. All right, good night, everyone, and I'll see you next week. Next week is going to be a fun video. I'm quite excited for it. And on that note, I'll see you in 7 days.